Hey everybody, it's Jason from the Texas Gun Vault, and today I'm coming to you with another range report. And today's range report is going to be on the HK P30. This is a fantastic firearm made by HK, kind of famous, chambered in 9mm. This is on loan to the channel from one of my local subscribers, Paulo, and this is the last one, I think, of about 6 or 7 guns he's let me borrow for review. And this is also a gun that, even though I have an extensive HK collection, it's just one that I've passed up on many times. And it's not because I don't want one or I'm not interested in one. It's been a number of factors between the features of the gun and its price point. And I'm going to talk about that, I think, in a moment here when I bring out the other P30 that I own, which is the SK version, or the subcompact. So let's talk about the range report first. This gun, very high quality, a lot of fun to shoot, and it's a very accurate gun. It is definitely a duty gun, so if you're looking for like a range precision pistol, this is not going to be the one for you. And one of the biggest complaints overall is the trigger. Now, Paulo has done a little bit of home gunsmithing himself and has replaced the trigger and I believe it's the disconnector, so you get a shorter reset. So as you see here, it has a flat face trigger, and this is from Gray Guns. It's kind of a unique design. I can't say that I am the biggest fan of the aesthetics of it, and in general, I'm not really a fan of flat triggers. I know that's kind of the new hotness right now. A lot of companies offer the flat face triggers, both in like AR platforms. I know SIG offers it. I know there's a lot of aftermarket stuff for Glock, flat face. I've always kind of felt that a little bit of curve is a little bit more comfortable for me personally. Now, I don't like over-curved triggers. In fact, one of the complaints I have about the Smith & Wesson M&P series is I think those triggers are just too curved. But I find that if you find something that's balanced like the FN 509, it's very flat, but it definitely has a little bit of curve to it. It's very comfortable for my finger. It allows you to place your finger anywhere on that trigger to kind of get an even pull, and it's a little bit more comfortable. I find that the flat face just isn't for me. It's mainly not really the face of the trigger, it's the side of the trigger where my finger comes into the trigger guard. It just feels a little bit odd to me. Is it a detriment to the pistol and the performance? No, and it's something that I definitely think that I could get used to. So it is what it is, but he really likes it. And that's something that's really important. Whenever you buy a firearm, even if you modify it yourself, if you see other people review certain aspects of your gun and they don't like it, but you do like it, you shouldn't take that as a slam against you or your tastes. Just because I don't like a flat face trigger doesn't mean a flat face trigger is bad or is not the perfect setup for you. So if you like the Gray Guns triggers in these HKs, please by no means get offended, because I think they're fantastic. Just aesthetically, and for me, ergonomically, they're just not for me. But he also has milled out the trigger guard a little bit. HKs have like a little bit of a hump down here. He kind of took what I believe is probably a Dremel tool, kind of flattened that out a little bit. He had said that his finger does get a little bit pinched in there, which is fine. As I said, it's his firearm and he can do with it whatever he likes. It might not be what I would choose to do with it, but I can definitely respect it, because one of the things is, if you're going to own a firearm, you want it to be tailored to you and you specifically. And that is what is most important. Speaking of tailoring the gun to you, something that I really do like about the P30 are the ability to not only replace the backstrap of the gun, you can also replace the side plates of the grip. So each one of these little side plates here is removable. Once you take out the little roll pin here, the backstrap comes out and these slide to the back. Now, normally, I'll have the same size on both sides. Now, Paulo has what appears to be kind of a thicker one on the left side of the gun and a thinner one on the right side of the gun. So obviously, he spent some time and kind of tailored it to his hand. So I didn't want to change that at all. But when you do get the case, and hopefully if you ever buy one on the used market, you pick up all these as well, but you do get multiple back straps here. So I think this is the large, and this one is the medium, I think. I'll have to look and see what it says. But I think this is the large. Yeah, it's the large and the medium. He's running the small on his, which I do like. I like the smaller back straps on the HKs, but you also get multiple side plates as well. So I think here there's 4 sets in here, so I think you get a small, medium, and large with those. And you can mix and match them depending on your desired fit to your hand. That's something about these grips that I really like. Some people refer to them as the Batman grip. I learned that term when it came to the HK 45, which this is my personal HK 45 here, which aesthetically looks just like the P30. I'm not honestly sure which gun came out first, either the P30 or the HK 45 series, but one definitely copies the other. Now, from an aesthetic standpoint, these guns look fantastic. They look very tactical for a duty firearm. You got front serrations, rear serrations. I like this little ledge in the front that's kind of backwards. The first time I ever saw the HK 45 was in a movie called The Book of Eli, starring Denzel Washington. But I've always looked at the P30 as kind of the 9mm version of the HK 45. But unfortunately, one of the things that has prevented me really from buying it is that it doesn't function the same way. And let me show you what I mean. On the HK 45, which this is a gun that is kind of like a 1911, designed by Larry Vickers and Ken Hackathorn. Obviously, it's hammer-fired, chambered in 45. Kind of a single stack, maybe a little bit of a staggered stack magazine, holds 10 rounds, so way more than a standard 1911. But it is a double action, single action firearm that has a safety on it. And of course, this is the variant 1, so I'm just going to speak from that perspective. You can actually have just a safety, just a decocker, or both, and also have the levers either right side, left side, or ambidextrous. But this is the variant 1 with the ambidextrous controls. And so one thing that I really like about the HK 45 series is that when the hammer is cocked, you can decock it by pushing down on the safety lever, and it just kind of puts the decocker and the safety in one place. It's one lever, different directions, actuated different, and your thumb is away from the hammer. I'm a big fan of that. I think the controls and ergonomics of this firearm are great. When it comes to the P30, and this is my same complaint with my P30 SK, which I'll show you in just a moment, this version does not have a safety at all. I really like manual safeties on any gun that is hammer fired, but this gun does have a decocker, and it is actually this little lever right here in the back. So when the hammer is cocked, you actually push down or push in on that lever and it lowers the hammer. I am just not a big fan of the placement of that decocker. For some reason, although I know it is safe, I don't like putting my finger on the hammer. Now, I know the hammer doesn't actually fire the gun if you push on it or press it or anything. But there's something about just having that your finger or your thumb so close to that hammer, it just makes me feel uneasy. Plus, if you have a version of the gun, like this is my P30 SK here, I do have the manual safety on this one. So this is not a decocker, so this is just a manual safety. It will not go down. But if the hammer is cocked, I gotta push this lever here in the back. Now, so let's see if I can get it from this side. There it is. And so that actually separates the decocker and the safety. So you have two different levers or two different actions. And it kind of reminds me a lot of the complaints of the Mark 23 by HK, in that they've always said that that gun is almost designed by committee. Like there was one group of engineers that worked on the decocker, one that worked on the safety. And so you have multiple levers on that gun where it should really be consolidated all into one. The internals of this gun are also very similar to that of the USP series, but they're not quite the same. And the USP series is a tried and tested gun. The HK 45 borrows a lot from the USP series. Not all the parts are compatible though, but it has the same function because the USP has the same safety decocker lever system. The P30 is just different. And that's just something about this gun I personally do not like. I really wish that decocker was in the lever on the side. Even if you don't want a manual safety like a SIG P226 or a P229, and you don't want a safety, because it's a carry gun. That's perfectly fine. I definitely think that decocker should be on the side where you can easily actuate it with your thumb up here, instead of having to kind of remove your palm a little bit from the firearm to push down on that decocker. Just not a fan of that, and I think the gun loses a lot of points in my book because of it. Now let's talk about price. This is something that has always confused me about the P30 series. When it comes to the P30 SK or the subcompact, very similar design, many parts are interchangeable. The MSRP on this gun is a lot less than its full-size counterpart. I will often see the SK version of this go from anywhere between, well, in non-panic times, between $525, maybe on the high end, $650, okay? That's kind of where I've seen this gun generally. But when it comes to the P30 full size here, and there actually is a P30L, which is a longer slide version, this is usually about an $800 gun. And I don't know where that extra $200 comes from, because all it is a longer barrel, a longer slide. But what goes into the grips and internally when it comes to the triggers and the controls, which are ambi for the slide release, the sights are the same. I don't know where that extra $200 comes from. And I've always been perplexed by that. Like, why is the P30, and generally an $800 gun, if not an $850 gun, kind of depending on where you buy it from, and the P30 SK considerably less? I think the machining, the engineering that went into it is exactly the same. So I don't know. So those two factors between the safety or the lack of safety on this and the placement of the decocker and its price has always deterred me from buying it. So if this gun was in a more competitive price point, $600 to $650 range like the SK version, I would probably own one already. Just because I love the aesthetics of this gun. I love how well it fits in my hand and how you can customize it to your hand. And that to me is its real selling point. Plus it's an HK. You guys know I'm a complete HK just snob. I love everything HK. So, but at the range with this gray gun's trigger in it, it was pretty good. And I will show you what this does with the short reset. I will compare it to the SK model. I do agree when people say that the P30 series doesn't have that great of a trigger, mainly because of the take-up and the reset. So let's kind of get a baseline here. So here's my SK version, okay? So the problem here is going to be there's a lot of take-up, kind of a mushy take-up. It comes almost all the way back to the back of the trigger guard. You finally feel the wall. The gun breaks. Pretty clean. I like that. And then here's the main problem, is the reset. It comes out, it's still going, still going, still going, click. There it is. That is a long travel. Then the take up for the next shot is pretty far. So all of that, you have to bring the trigger back to that wall again for it to break. So I totally see where people complain about the triggers on the P30s. It might be able to be engineered a little bit better, in my opinion, because the HK45 doesn't have that length of travel in their stock trigger. Now, this is the stock HK trigger. So now let's take a look at the gray guns version. So here is that flat trigger I was talking about. So here is the initial take up right here. It's really light, and here you feel a wall, but like I've talked about with other aftermarket triggers, to me, it doesn't feel like it's breaking a glass rod. You get to that wall, you definitely feel it, and then it doesn't take much effort beyond that, and the trigger falls, or the trigger breaks. Now on the reset, this is what I do like about this trigger a lot. The reset is very short for an HK. There it is, and then there's barely any take up to get back to the wall again. So there's aspects of this trigger that I really like. I kind of wish I could blend the two and have the stock kind of curved trigger that you get in the gun when it comes out of the box, but have that shorter reset. And personally, I think HK could do a better job in their engineering, because if aftermarket companies, with just replacing one or two parts, which you can buy online, fixes that reset so much, they should be able to do that from the factory. But as I said, that's just me being kind of a trigger snob and just also wanting to keep the gun as much HK as possible. But that's just me as a collector too. So how does this thing overall shoot as it sits? I enjoyed it. The triggers attracted me a lot from the shooting experience, and of course the decocker, as I mentioned. Recoil manages the recoil great for a 9mm. It uses that dampening system around the recoil spring that you see in many of the USPs and the HK 45s. So it's a pleasurable gun to shoot. But you definitely have to spend some time on the trigger if you want the best trigger possible. So depending if you're looking for a range gun, one that you can be very accurate with, this isn't the way to go. If you're looking for a very high quality duty or concealed carry gun, I don't think you can beat it, except for the price. Yeah, you can definitely beat a price on that. So how am I going to rate this on my star system, 1 through 5? Well, this one might surprise you because you guys know I am an HK snob. I love HKs. I'm only going to give this gun, as it sits, this particular version with no manual safety and the gray guns trigger in it, I only give it 3 out of 5 stars. It's not that enjoyable to shoot, and I think that even though if this was a stock gun without the modifications, without this trigger, I'd still probably only give it 3.5 stars out of 5. I just feel like the stock trigger could be better, which the gray guns for me doesn't fix it. I feel like the placement of the decocker is in a weird place, and most importantly, I think the price is too high for what you get, especially when, as I mentioned, you can get the SK version for much cheaper. And there's not that much of a difference between it. I mean, that little bit of metal in the front and the length of the plastic in the grip isn't going to add $200 to the MSRP or the overall price. So that's just my thoughts on that. So those things is why I've just never gotten a P30. Now, if someone gave me a P30, I'm not going to turn it down, but I'm not in a rush to get one, and this gun does not fall into the list of guns I definitely want right now. Although aesthetically, absolutely love it, because as I mentioned, it looks like a baby version of the HK 45. So in a kind of a way, I wish they would come out with a version of the HK 45 and call it maybe the HK 9, where all of the controls are the same, but you still get the same aesthetics and ergonomics. So there you go. So that is my range reports and thoughts on the HK P30. This particular version, as I mentioned, is on loan from Paulo, one of my local subscribers. And so I'm very grateful and very thankful to have that type of support in my community here on the channel. And I'm going to get this gun all cleaned up and get it back to him and thank him profusely for allowing me to shoot all of his amazing and awesome firearms. So there you go. So do you guys have a P30? What do you think of it? And do you guys share any of my thoughts on this gun? Or maybe you disagree. And remember, that's perfectly fine. If I say something about this gun that I don't like, but you absolutely love it, that is wonderful. And that's what makes the firearms world so cool and so unique, that we can have different opinions, but still love firearms in general. So there you go. So that is my thoughts and range report, HK P30. Full size. So let me know if you have any questions. And as always, thanks for watching.